Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. The Black Sea is increasingly central to Europe's security, with Russia seeking to expand its influence and Turkey balancing cooperation with Moscow against its own regional interests. Now, the relationship between Presidents Vladimir Putin and Recep Tayyip Erdogan adds a layer of complexity to the situation, while Ankara's control of the Turkish Straits gives it a key role in regional stability. Now, to help us understand these developments and what they mean for the wider region, we're joined now by Grigol Julukhidze, Associate Professor, Caucasus University. Good to have you back on TVP World.
Thank you, Sasha. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, it may be an understatement. So rather than say that this is the first time Russia is asserting itself in the Black Sea, maybe give us a bit of a take. What is the current situation now? What are the biggest risks here in terms of the whole Black Sea region?
Well, the relationship between Turkey and Russia in the South Caucasus and in the Black Sea basin is a fascinating and complex one, best described as a mix of competition and pragmatic cooperation. Historically, this region has been a zone of contention for centuries, with the Ottoman and Russian Empire constantly vying for influence. This historical rivalry continues even today, but with new dynamics. For decades after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia was the undisputed dominant power. However, Turkey has been steadily increasing its footprint, primarily through its strong alliance with Azerbaijan. The 2020 Karabakh War was a major turning point in this regard. Turkey and its overt military and political support for Azerbaijan was instrumental in Baku's victory, which significantly altered the regional balance of power. This event signaled that Russia's influence was no longer exclusive and that Turkey was a major player. Well, as for the concrete details of this rivalry, we can say that there are several directions. First of all, we have to focus on Azerbaijan-Armenia relations. It is the most significant flashpoint. Turkey's support has emboldened Azerbaijan to take a more assertive stance, pushing for a peace deal on its own terms and pursuing infrastructure projects like the Zanzagur corridor, which would connect Azerbaijan to its exclave, Nakhchivan, and then on to Turkey. This is happening with less and less Russian involvement, which is a clear sign of Moscow's diminishing traditional role as the sole security guarantor in the region. Russia's focus on Ukraine has further weakened its hand in the South Caucasus, in the Black Sea region, allowing Turkey to fill this vacuum.
Mm-hmm. Interesting points there, especially how the dynamic has changed now with Turkey also involved in the Southern Caucasus. But I want to pull back more into the Black Sea here, Grigol. I want to kind of focus also on, this has been an area where we've seen a lot of also naval combat between the Russians and the Ukrainians. We've also seen a lot of mines. We've seen, this has been in the news also in terms of the whole corridor for grain transport, for food. This region matters very much. At this point, you also said that balance between competition, pragmatism between Russia and Turkey. Where is that now? I mean, that's also a very personal relationship, isn't it, between Vladimir Putin and also President Erdogan. Is it leaning now more in recent months towards competition or more towards cooperation in your mind?
Well, Erdogan's mediation efforts are a masterclass in strategic diplomacy driven by a blend of domestic, economic, and geopolitical interests. Turkey has managed to maintain open lines of communication with both Kiev and Moscow, a feat very few other countries have achieved. And that's the combination of economic pragmatism, geopolitical ambition, and domestic image as well. For example, Turkey relies heavily on Russia for energy and tourism. A complete break would be economically catastrophic for Ankara. At the same time, it has a strong partnership with Ukraine, especially in the defense industry. For example, the sole fact of the sale of Bayraktar drones. Maintaining this balance is critical for Turkey. Of course, we cannot ignore the geopolitical ambitions. The mediation role elevates Turkey's international profile and positions. It's a I would say, crucial middle power in global affairs. It allows Ankara to showcase its diplomatic influence and operate a key bridge between the West and Russia, thereby increasing its leverage with both sides. And of course, for Erdogan, this role bolsters his image at home as a strong and indispensable leader who can navigate complex international crises. Of course, the role of Black Sea Basin is being increased on a daily basis, especially amid ongoing invasion of Russia, of Ukraine by the Russian Federation, and the endeavor of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization to make the Black Sea as the NATO Sea, as they often claim about that, is quite unrealistic in this situation, especially if we take into consideration that the fact that a certain part of the Black Sea Basin is right now under the direct control of Russia. Apart from that, we cannot ignore the fact that one occupied territory of Georgia, which is Abkhazia, is under Russian control, where the military Navy base is being constructed right now. It means that we will see more and more uncertainty in this regard. And Turkey understands this scenario quite well and is trying to benefit from it very effectively.
Mm-hmm. I want to draw in on one point you mentioned as Erdogan's, as you put it, masterclass in terms of trying to navigate pragmatism, having those connections also economically and politically with Russia, but also in the West at the same time. I'm curious, on the one point, is Turkey then maybe that key candidate that could bring about more, let's say, bringing Russia and Ukraine to the same table in terms of actual negotiated settlement or peace of some kind? And secondly, if we look at, as you put it, the medium or middle power that Turkey is, what about the global South? Can they also step in here and sway Russia in sitting down for peace?
Well, I think that the global South right now has more leverage over Russia than Turkey, despite the growing role of Turkey in the region and the Black Sea region, basin. And as for the first part of the question, I would say that right now Turkey is presented in the Black Sea region as exclusively independent and mercantilistic state actor with no, I would say, altruistic ambitions. And I would say that Erdogan's mediation is a strategic tool rather than a neutral, purely altruistic effort, and it has yielded concrete, albeit limited results, and significantly enhanced Turkey's standing, but it has not been able to end the conflict and will not be able. It's a clear example of Turkey's foreign policy under Erdogan and agile and opportunistic approach that seeks to maximize its influence and secure its national interests in a multipolar world.
Mm-hmm. And also looking at the Black Sea and the wider rung, I mean, if we're looking also from the battlefield, I mean, the Ukrainians have had successes pushing back the Russian fleet, doing some heavy actual punches, sinking certain battleships, also moving the entire fleet to the east of the Black Sea. Looking now also, I mean, NATO is involved here as well in terms of right there with Romania, with Bulgaria. How much, let's say, if we're looking medium term, long term, of a flashpoint is this region going to be? We're calling it the NATO lake up in the Baltic, but as you said, I want to put more into this. How much is NATO's presence felt here, and how much is NATO involved here also with Turkey?
As I have already mentioned, Turkey in the region is represented as a very opportunistic player. And this opportunism sometimes means the full ignorance of the interests and the full violation, sometimes the interests of the collective West, which benefits the Russian interests. And apart from that, we have to admit that Ankara is using this crisis to increase its role. As for NATO, its leverage has significantly grown over the past 3 years, especially after the outbreak of the Russo-Ukrainian war. But still, there are a lot of challenges in this regard. As I have mentioned, Russia is investing a lot of money to fortify its positions in the Black Sea basin. Apart from that, Russia managed to increase its influence over the occupied territory of Georgia, which is Abkhazia, which has also strategic importance to control the Black Sea basin. It means that this clash of interests will be kept within the next few years. It's inevitable completely. And also we have to admit that the fact that there is no consensus within NATO in terms of its approach to the Black Sea basin because of this divided position and divisions inside the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which creates quite a fertile soil for the Russian Federation to act with more certainty and with more courage in order to undermine the national security of Georgia, to make the Black Sea basin more unpredictable, and to damage Ukraine as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. And also interesting point you mentioned at the beginning about how very much Turkey has also moved more strategically and diplomatically into the Southern Caucasus. If we're looking also, I mean, they were very much all over, I think, a lot of the initial foray into diplomacy between Azerbaijan and Armenia. I mean, Trump got, I think, the praise there not so long ago, or took the praise at least, for settling all this. I mean, we see Russia in a retreat here, as we said, in the Black Sea strategically, then also in the Southern Caucasus. I mean, that must wound Putin as well directly. Does this mean that Russia is finished in the Caucasus, or will there be a pushback? How do you see this play out in the next months and years?
One thing is absolutely clear, that Russia lost its influence over Azerbaijan, because by resolving the issue of territorial integrity, Baku managed to release itself from the claws of Moscow, while fortifying its strategic alliance and cooperation with Big Brother, Turkey. Apart from that, we have to understand the complex reality of the South Caucasus, in which Armenia, which has become extremely pro-Western over the last few years, is under the control of the Russian Federation. I mean, energy, economic, and military control. And I remind you that 2 military bases are stationed in Armenia. I mean, at least the leftovers of these bases. And Georgia, which is the core of South Caucasus, because without direct access to Georgia and without the strategic alliance of Georgia, it is impossible to control the South Caucasus. But in this regard, Moscow has achieved tangible results, especially in controlling Georgia and in keeping the situation in Armenia more unstable. As for Baku, yes, once again, I repeat that the Russian Federation is not the only and exclusive key player in the South Caucasus by actions and thanks to the actions of Turkey. Russia has weakened, yes, in the region because of the ongoing war in Ukraine, because it is obliged to allocate its resources there, even from the occupied territories of Georgia. But still, we should not underestimate the capacities and resources of Russia to make the processes even worse and create so-called predictable chaos in this complex geopolitical region.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, complex indeed, and as we can observe for the moment at least, a week in Russia. Let's see if that holds. Look, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for all that analysis, Grigol Julukhidze. Very much appreciated. And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks here on TVP World, but stay tuned, much more coming up, so don't go away. Goodbye.